Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start by sharing screens here and getting started on our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll let everyone connect. I know we have a large audience today, so we'll just wait a couple more seconds for people's audio to connect. Welcome to our How to Apply to UICOM webinar. My name is Bridget Doyle, and I'm the Associate Director here at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. And I'm in our admissions office. And I have a couple colleagues behind the scenes here. And we're here to talk to you about how to apply to our medical school. We'll cover timelines, to what we're looking for in an applicant, to how we review our applicants. And I'm sure a huge reason why a lot of you are here is talking about how to get a leg up on writing probably one of the most difficult pieces of your application, and that's the personal statement or the personal comment section, as you'll see it named in the formal AMCAS application. I want to start with a few housekeeping reminders before we jump in. So as you probably heard while you were entering, this webinar is being recorded. We're going to upload it to our YouTube channel and send it out as a reminder in about a week or two, along with a survey on what you thought of the event. And since this is a webinar platform, we've muted all of our participants and we've kept your cameras off so you can just focus on the presentation. And we're going to be covering a lot of content, so let me just remind all of you that please hold all of your questions until the very end, and then we'll bring our panel back on and we'll just rapid fire for the whole 90 minutes. For the remaining time, I should say, of the 90 minutes. So you won't use the chat feature, so try to stay away from the chat feature. Use that formal Q&A function that's at the bottom of your screen, and I'll remind you of this as we get closer to the end. If you've come to one of our webinars before, you know that we like to talk about who's here with us, and it's just to highlight all of the places that are not only our applicants come from, but our students come from. So I first like to point out that this pie chart is not unusual. We are an Illinois public institution and we educate about 1 in 6 healthcare professionals in the state. So that's why we have a lot of applicants from Illinois and a lot of students. But please know we don't have quotas on how many need to come from Illinois, how many can come from out of state, or how many come internationally. For those of you joining either as applicants or postgrads, which is probably the majority you see here, or even as seniors, this is a perfect time because applying to medical school is going to be quickly approaching. And I always like to send a big kudos out to our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. I'm glad that we made it onto your list of schools that you're looking into applying to. And of course, I always like to say hi to our pre-med advisors and all of our other staff joining. We love seeing you on these as well. And I also love this slide, and we purposely put it on all of our presentations because when you register, it highlights your journey to medicine. And it can be different. It can be traditional. You maybe just took a lot of biology courses, and you can see here that really is some of the top undergraduate majors. Or it can be a winding road. You might come to us straight from undergrad, but maybe you took a couple decades off to explore another career. So I like to focus on this graph just to let you know that everyone's pathway to medicine is very different. And if you're coming from the sciences, or maybe you spent time in business, anthropology, I've seen theater majors turn to medicine. This is a part of your story and it'll help in your personal statement, which we'll get to in the second part of this. Now, there are a lot of components to your application. I'm sure you're probably aware of them. These are just a few of the basics that we're going to delve into now in the subsequent slides. Now, we're going to go over budget. Okay, it's not just the cost of the application. There are other fees that are associated with applying to medical school and maybe other costs that you simply didn't consider. We're going to go over timelines, both AMCAS and UICOM specifically, MCAT considerations, how to put your experiences, and I'm sure you have a lot of them, from research to volunteering, how to put those into your AMCAS application. We'll cover transcript details, of course, that personal statement, getting those letters of recommendation and from who do you get those letters. And we'll also cover a short piece on the supplemental part or the secondary application. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amiri, who can come on stage and take this next piece.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Hi, everyone. I am Layla Amiri, the Assistant Dean for Admissions and Recruitment, and really excited that you're here with us tonight to talk about the application process. So rarely in our presentations do we talk about the cost of the application, and so we wanted to highlight that for you. Very shortly, Lori will drop into the chat for you the link to the AMCAS website where you can find all of the reference material for the AMCAS related information that we're sharing with you. So it's pretty expensive to apply to medical school. As you can see on this slide, the initial application fee is $170 for the first school, and then it's $41 for each subsequent school that you choose to submit an application to. You have to take into consideration the cost of the secondary application fee, which will vary from roughly around $30 to upwards of over $100. Any college service fees that may be applicable to you, that's generally what your university will require in order to release your transcripts to the AMCAS. And then finally, the MCAT exam fee. So the initial registration fee for the MCAT is $320, so it's not a cheap test to take. So again, things that you should be thinking about as you are thinking about the process of application to medical school. Oh, I apologize, I went too quickly. So other expenses that you should think about. So I have italicized here travel accommodations and attire. It seems that most medical schools are going to keep a virtual process in place for applications, but we don't know, right? So keep that in the back of your mind in case there is an institution which will invite you to interview on site. Then you need to think about the medical school application tools and guidebooks that are available through the AAMC, other materials that you will pay for on your own to help prepare you for application to medical school. So for example, the medical school admissions requirements website that will give you access to all of the behind the scenes information that you want from the schools to which you're applying. Any costs that are related to preparation for the MCAT, and that'll be completely based on what you decide to do, right? So you may decide to register for a course, you may decide to purchase the tests that are written by the AAMC, and you may decide to purchase other types of support, for example, tutoring. So you have to think about those expenses as well. Any accommodation requests that any of you might be thinking about, there's always supportive documentation that you need to provide to the folks at AMCAS. And so if it's additional testing that's required, if it's a report that's required, so those expenses get added into the total cost of what you're thinking about. And so given that these costs are piling up and it'll be expensive to apply to medical school, I want to draw your attention to the AAMC's fee assistance program. So please feel free to take advantage of it, apply for it. They have modified the parameters for the fee assistance, but for the for your general guidelines, you can see that it's set to federal and state guidelines in terms of poverty levels. Okay, let's talk a little bit about timelines. So on this slide, I have MCAS timelines as well as UICOM specific timelines. So the MCAT dates that will still be available for you to consider based on today's presentation will be April 30th through September 11th, which is the last date that the MCAT will be offered in this calendar year. For our program, we want MCATs that are no older than 3 years. So it'll be any MCAT that was offered in January of 2018, all the way up to obviously the September 11th date. The AMCAS application will be open for you to begin populating on May 3rd, okay? And then you will submit your primary application based on the deadlines of the schools to which you intend to apply for For us, that deadline is November 1st. So you must have submitted a full primary application to AMCAS by the deadline in order for us to receive your application. Applications need to be verified by AMCAS. And what does that mean? That means that they're actually going to compare the grades that you've entered into the application to the transcript that they received from your institution. And we'll talk about transcripts in a minute. That's the verification process, okay? Secondary application deadlines will vary from institution to institution. For us, our secondary application deadline is December 1st. So all the items that go into the secondary application must be in our office in time for that December 1st deadline. The interviews generally will go sometime in July all the way up through March, April of 2022. For us, interviews will run around August through March as well. We are a rolling acceptances medical school. So for those of you that may consider applying early decision, those decisions go out on October 1st. Otherwise, the AAMC guidelines allow us to start accepting students on October 15th. What is rolling acceptances in comparison to those who do bulk acceptances? Schools that do bulk acceptances will interview all of their candidates and sometime release all acceptances once their interview season has closed in February or March. So it'll vary from school to school. And again, you'll do your homework using the websites and the MSAR to determine what process the institutions that you're applying to utilize. And then the matriculation dates will vary. So our matriculation date is typically that first week in August. Now, many of you are probably aware of the fact that we are a multi-campus institution. And so when you apply to us, you apply to the system, you're accepted to the system. And so campus rankings on there is reminding me to share with you that when we offer an acceptance to a student, we ask you to rank the campuses to help us identify which campus would be most suitable for your educational needs. So let's talk about preparation for the MCAT. There's really not a one size fits all, and there isn't one size fits all because at this stage of your academic careers, you're adult learners, right? And so there's different ways that you prepare for taking exams that vary from individual to individual. So the advice that we can give you is understand what your strengths are. Okay, and where you think you will have strengths and possible weaknesses on the MCAT. So probably taking a couple of mock tests before you actually start studying will be helpful because it gives you a baseline understanding of where those strengths and weaknesses are for you. Then have an understanding of how you like to prepare. Do you need to pay thousands of dollars in order to sit yourself down to study for the test? Do you need to study in groups? Do you need to study solo? What is the frequency of the tests that you need to take? So again, understand yourself as a learner. Give yourself plenty of time to prepare. This also goes back to you being an adult learner and you understanding yourself, right? So are you a crammer? You cram and then you go take the test and you do great, or do you need some time to read the material, think about it, then take the test, right? So how much time you need to prepare for the exam will vary from individual to individual. And you will get all sorts of advice from all sorts of sources. And listen to all of that advice and see what works specifically for you. But most importantly, you want to be sure that you've given yourself enough time so that you're not panicked because you need to go back and revisit the passage. Register for the exam early so you have enough time to take the exam, right? And so you can prepare as well. So if you're going to take the test in fall, and if it's going to conflict with your classes, then be sure to register for it for a time that won't be at the time that you're taking exams or not at a time that's going to make you uncomfortable as you're sitting for the test. So the best piece of advice that I can give for you in addition to all of this is many students start their preparation for the MCAT by going back and restudying biology and restudying chemistry. And I will invite you to trust yourself and trust that you understand and you know biology and you know chemistry and you know the physics. You'll revisit that for a little bit of time, and most of your time will be spent on mastering the exam to be prepared to know what type of questions are coming your way. All right. Now I want to move into the AMCAS, and it's got lots of sections. So we've separated this presentation by the different AMCAS sections. So the first parts of the MCAT, sections 1 through 3, are really identifying information. Okay, so standard information that you would expect to fill out on any type of application. Okay, and any ID numbers that might appear on the transcripts. You might already know that AMCAS stopped collecting Social Security numbers many, many years ago. They will ask you to complete all the schools that you've attended, all the way back from high school. Okay, so the high school where you graduated, and that's important because it helps provide context to your educational experiences. Okay, also, we will ask for any institutional actions that you may have received along the way. Okay, and also you need to provide information on all schools that you've attended, even if you've completed only one class, or even if you only registered for one class and you never even completed the course. So basically, any institution including your high school, post-high school that you've ever attended needs to appear on the school's attended section of your AMCAS. And then finally, there's a biographic information section in this first part, which is basically contact information, citizenship, your state of legal residence, any military service, siblings, those types of general biographic information that we would have from you. The AMCAS also includes a felonies and misdemeanors section. Okay, and so this part creates a lot of anxiety for individuals that feel that they have something to share in there. Okay, this gives you an opportunity to disclose and explain any felonies or misdemeanors that you may think will appear on a record. Because as you might know, AMCAS has an agreement with a company that will conduct background checks on all students who are admitted to medical school. So it's best for you to disclose anything that you feel will appear on a background check. Institutional actions should be indicated here as well. The best policy is to be safe and to share, because that way the admissions committees have had full access to read whatever you have to provide, and then there's no surprises for you or for them when they get the opportunity to meet you. If something happens after you've submitted your AMCAS application, you're strongly encouraged to contact the medical schools, okay? So you should contact each of us, all of the schools to which you've applied, and the recommendation is for you to do that within 10 days. Let us know what happened, because you can't update this on your AMCAS anymore. Okay, section 4, coursework. So you will need to submit transcripts to AMCAS, and as I mentioned earlier, this is the piece of your application that they verify. So when you look at your trajectory of where your application is and you're waiting to be verified, what's happening is individuals are comparing the courses that you've entered to the transcript that you've submitted. Okay, so you will need to submit one official transcript from every institution that you've attended. Okay, so US territorial, or Canadian institutions that you've attempted coursework and actually completed coursework. So you see highlighted in red, problems with transcripts are the #1 cause of processing delays and missing deadlines. Okay, so if you're in the military and you've been to several institutions, they will not verify your application until they've received everything. As a matter of fact, we had several students this year who had a bit of a challenge with the timing of the transcripts that were sent to us. Okay, transcripts have to go from your registrar's office directly to AMCAS. Okay, so they will decline the transcript if it comes directly from you, if it was for the wrong student, if it's not legible, because some institutions are not participating in electronic transcripts. They will copy things and mail it in. So make sure that your ducks are in a row. And this was the point about applying early. Register for things early and submit your application materials early. So if there's anything that you need to follow up with, you're not missing any deadlines. Okay, so the coursework section is not difficult, right? Unlike what Bridget just mentioned with you and what we're going to talk about later, like the personal comments are, it's just tedious, right? Because you have to enter every single course that you've ever taken. So our recommendation is to keep a copy of your transcript next to you. Now, it doesn't need to be the official copy. If your school requires that you pay for it, maybe you can print an unofficial copy from your school's website, but have that next to you. Include everything that you've ever taken. So don't omit courses that you withdrew from or that were incomplete, or that were canceled. Anything that you've ever attempted needs to be on that section. Again, discrepancies delay the process, okay? It needs to be aligned completely. What you enter needs to be exactly what you submit to AMCAS through your registrar's office. If you've done foreign coursework or study abroad information, we're not going to dig into that right now. The link that I mentioned that will be in the chat will give you clear instructions on how you need to enter that information into AMCAS. So again, it doesn't cause any delays. AMCAS will calculate a grade point average for you. The grade point averages that they calculate for us are the biology, chemistry, physics, and math, or your science GPA, and all other courses GPA, okay? They give us an overall GPA. They give us a post-baccalaureate GPA. So that's any coursework that you've completed after you completed your bachelor's degree. Then they do combine it into a cumulative undergraduate, which takes whatever you took for your baccalaureate degree and whatever undergraduate additional coursework you completed after your bachelor's degree. And if you've done any graduate coursework, even if it's one class, even if it's one credit, even if it's just a P or an S, they still have that in a separate line. That's how we receive your grades, and they standardize it all. So if you're in a quarter system or in a different system other than the standard, semester credits that we see through credits for a class, don't worry about it. That is all standardized, and all institutions will see the same evaluation of your academic record. So I'm not going to go through our prerequisites. I'm going to invite you to visit our website, but just know that different schools will have different requirements as far as prerequisites are concerned. And you need to be certain that you've either met them or you will meet them. And schools will vary. There are schools that will not invite a candidate for interview unless they've met all their prerequisites. There's schools like us that we will be okay if we know that you can complete the outstanding courses. So again, make sure that you're visiting the school websites and you have a clear understanding of what the prerequisites are for each of the programs to which you're applying. Now let's talk a little bit about the metrics. The bell curve that you see here is just to help you understand, the MCAT, what the minimum and maximum scores are on the MCAT. And the top of the curve is 500, which is always normalized to be the 50th percentile. Okay, so wherever the bulk of the scores are, that'll be a score of 500. So if you look at different institutions, you're going to assess where you are in that curve, right, with the metrics that you have on your application. So for us, our average GPA, incoming GPA, has roughly been sitting around a 3.7 for the past year. That GPA includes, the consideration that we've given to the science GPA, the BCPM, includes looking at course workloads the students have had. Remember, W's or incompletes need to be included on there. So we look at the occurrence and prevalence of those types of performance indicators on an application. We also look at GPA trends. So if a student came in and it took them a minute to get comfortable with college, but then sophomore year and beyond, they just took off, we'll look at that GPA trend versus a student who came in really strong and over time their performance declined. So that would be a little bit of a concern, right, to understand how they would perform in medical school. And obviously, if a student has done graduate coursework, we will take that into consideration. So when you're thinking about how we look at your transcript, I will let you know that if you completed a post-bac or if you've completed graduate work, that'll be more recent than when you did the bachelor's degree. And if the bachelor's degree was a little bit weaker and not clearly indicative of your academic abilities, what we're going to focus on is going to be the most recent and the most relevant. And then the MCAT for us, our range is a 497 to about a 522 with the classes that we yield. We end up with an average about a 513, right? And so again, that gives you a sense of who are the students that are being admitted. So the bulk of the students are going to be around a 513. There's a few in the really high end of the MCAT scores, and then there's a few on the little bit lower end of the MCAT score. And you see this because of the holistic admissions process that we have, which we will talk about as we go on with this presentation. The fifth section of the AMCAS is the experiences section. Okay, so you've got 15 boxes to fill, and many of you will have more than 15 things to share. Okay, so what is it do you want us to see? And why is it important for us to see this? Because where you've spent your time and your effort is indicative of your interest in this profession. Okay, so my recommendation to you is going to be to enter only those experiences that are significant. Many of the students who apply to medical school, for example, have been on the dean's list. So if you've been on the dean's list for all of your academic career, you don't need to take 8 boxes to tell us that you were on the dean's list every semester, right? If it's really important for you for us to know that, even though you're graduating magna cum laude, and we know that you're on the dean's list anyway, what I would encourage you to do is just take 1 box and just put that in there, okay? The information is entered in chronologically in AMCAS. We can sort it however we want to based on how we're interested in seeing it, but it comes to us chronologically. And there are 3 most meaningful experiences that you can enter. And so I would say, think long and hard about those. Allow us to understand the diversity of experiences that you've had. You get some extra characters for those. So you can give us a little bit more meaningful understanding. What we're looking for is how you've been impacted by these experiences, not that you just did them. So the examples that you see on the right-hand side of the slide are things that we see in our applications. But I will let you know that what's happening tonight is probably happening at many other medical schools across the country, right? There's no secret on these types of experiences that all of the medical schools are looking for. So when you think about categories of experiences, all applicants are going to have similar types of experiences. What you took away is what's important for us. And that's what we're asking you to put in the experiences section. Okay, so what was meaningful, what was significant for you on this journey? The 6th section is the letters of recommendation. Okay, so what you will do is not submit your letters of recommendation with the primary, but because the AAMC has a really nice letter service set up, you will enter the names of your recommenders there. Okay, there's a letter request form that you will download from the AMCAS website where it will link the writer to you, and once the writer submits the letter to AMCAS, it can be automatically connected to your application. It may take up to 3 days for the letter to show up on our end, so don't be impatient. Okay, so if the letter has been uploaded and it's showing there and your letters still appear incomplete for us or for any other institution, don't worry about it, give it a little bit of time. The types of letters that you can upload are seen here on this slide, right? So it can be a committee letter, it can be a letter packet, so there's no analysis there. Your advising office will just submit whatever letters you've compiled. It can be an individual letter. You can ask your faculty members to submit individual letters. Timing is going to be important. The completed application has the letters attached to it. So start asking for those letters. If you're in the applicant pool this year, you should start talking to your faculty members and your recommenders now, giving them deadlines, following up with them, connecting them to the AAMC website so that they know how to upload their letters, okay? And for reapplicants, if you are reapplying, look to the different schools. Some schools are okay with you using last year's letters. We prefer that you send new letters in to us. So check with the different schools. If you can get new letters, that is helpful. For our process, the only reason that we want letters from you is because we want more information about you, right? We want information about you that the AMCAS application doesn't allow us to collect. And that is, how do others see you? What do other people have to say about you? So our letters are here, 3 faculty letters or a research mentor and 2 faculty or a committee letter. I know it gets complicated because not everyone is straight going through medical school, this medical process, right? Some students are taking time off, some people are non-traditional. So visit our website to get the details on what the different variations are. And if you've got questions, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have for us. Okay, so number 7, you have to identify the schools to which you wish to apply, right? So this is a common application that you fill out and AMCAS generally sends it out to the rest of us. So you have to decide what are those schools that you want to apply to, right? So there's lots of options, right? Outside of all of the schools which are on AMCAS, and then not all schools are MCAS participating schools, right? Because there's schools in Texas that aren't even part of MCAS, the TM, DSAS, and you will apply through the Texas process. So for our program, you can apply to a regular MD. You can apply officially to the combined medical degree, so that'll be the MD, PhD. You can apply to a combined medical degree graduate for us. So that will be all of the different types of MD master's degrees that we have. Some schools will allow you to apply directly into their MD, MPH, MD, MBA, MD, MS. We don't do that, and there's particular reasons. Most of it and all of it is for your development and for you to have an opportunity to meet with our faculty members. There are students who have been approved for deferred delayed matriculation. So if you try to click on that, that doesn't mean that you can delay your matriculation this year. Deferred delayed matriculants are students who were admitted and through an appeal process have asked for the school to hold their seat into the next incoming class. That needs to be pre-approved by us or the schools to which you're applying. Other special programs show up at different institutions. Generally, those are going to be early assurance programs or other types of bridge programs that those institutions may have. And then the early decision program, which we have one, is the program where you work with the institution, submit your application materials early. You're only applying to one medical school, but then they will give you priority evaluation and other perks as well, right? So for us, for example, you get the campus of your choice. There is an expedited process through the review. Those students are interviewed on the first 2 days of our interview process. And you may remember that I said October 1st for early decision students. So those students that are admitted through the EDP hear about the status of their application a couple weeks earlier than the rest of the applicants. The only con to the EDP is that your application goes in a little bit later, right? If you are not successful in the EDP program. Again, if you're interested in early decision program, reach out to the schools that are offering it to get more information from them. The 8th section is the essay, and we have another team member who will give you lots of information on how to have a great personal comments section. The 9th section are standardized tests. Okay, so if you're taking the MCAT after 2003, which is clearly now, those scores are automatically released to the institutions. There isn't anything that you need to do, except if you have voided the exam. Obviously, that will not appear to us. Thinking about the age of the exam is important for the schools that you're applying to, right? So we want your schools to be no older than 3 years. You should check with the different schools. And if you're just on the cusp, again, check with the school. So it might be that you have an exam that's from 2017 and now it's too old for the schools that you're planning on applying to. So now you have to take an MCAT. So think about that, okay? The other test is for those of you applying straight into joint degree programs. So MD PhDs sometimes will require GRE and sometimes will require even a subject GRE, okay? The MBA MD sometimes will require the GMAT, okay? And so if those programs require them and you have taken them, there's an other test section on the AMCAS application. You'll click yes, and then it'll open up and you'll let them know what the other test was that you've taken and which school it needs to be delivered to. We do not require the GRE for our MD PhD, so you don't have to worry about that for us. And the MD MBA is a program that you apply to once you've matriculated to our program. So again, don't need to worry about that for us. Okay, supplemental applications. General advice, and again, another team member will talk with you about this a little bit in a little bit of time. My advice is answer the questions, okay? Read the question and answer the question that is being asked of you. And I know that might sound like a silly piece of advice, but I wouldn't be saying it if it wasn't really advice that I felt you needed to hear, right? So answer the question that's being asked. If you're copying and pasting from another school that you think the questions are similar, read into it. Remember, this is our opportunity to give you carefully thought out questions that are unique to us. The rest of the application has been generic and it goes to everybody that you send it to, right? So this is our piece of the application. Your responses are really important for us. We have a challenge question in there. Okay, so why do you think we have a challenge question in there that's asking you, tell me about a challenge, and more importantly, tell me how you dealt with it and how you're going to use that information for future experiences. Look at the question and answer it. We've got another interest section. Again, that's important for us. We're a huge school. We're an old school. We've got lots of things that we can offer to you. Why is it that we're interested in the other things that you're interested in doing? Because you can get a medical education and a really good one at any school, right? Why is it ours? So think about that question as you're responding to it. We've got a COVID-19 question in there because we know that the pandemic shut down all of those experiences that you had planned or you were engaged with. And we don't want you to be concerned about how it looks, right? It looks as it looks. There's a pandemic and you couldn't do your research. What did you do instead? So tell us how it impacted you and what else you did. Okay, letters of recommendation. Our portal is set up so that you can see if your letters have been approved. Please check frequently and specifically read the notes section. We put a lot of effort in there to clarify what is missing on the notes, right? And so please don't email us now asking us why your letters weren't approved because in your mind you had sent us all the appropriate letters. Okay, so check the status of your letters. On our website, you'll see they need to be on letterhead. They need to have a signature. They need to be specifically from, specific individuals and see what you're missing. Okay, and then the fee is required as well. So we do have a supplemental application fee. So all of these things must be in place by December 1 for your application to be complete to move forward in our process. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our team member, Kia. Or no, I think I'm not supposed to hand it over to Kia. I apologize, Kia. I thought this was the division slide, sorry. I want to share with you our mission statement because we've talked about the application process with you up to this point, right? And how does this all feed into the mission of the different institutions? The mission statement that you see here in front of you is the mission that informs our admissions process, the students that we invite, and very importantly, the physicians that we train. This is the current class that we have seated at our institution. I'm not going to read the slide for you, but as you can see, it is a very diverse class in terms of students' ethnicities, where students come to us from around the country and even around the globe and the different institutions and languages that they speak. I want to share with you a little bit about our incoming class. So broadly represented across the entire US. So on the past slide, you saw we had 25 different states represented. Currently, we have about 34, 35 states represented. So we do a great job of recruiting students from all over the country. We're looking forward to see what our class looks like when they matriculate with us in August. We also accept international students, as you saw in the previous slide. So currently, we have students admitted to our medical school from the countries that you see represented. Again, broadly diverse for the group of students who we are admitting. And what I want to focus on a little bit is how we meet our mission, which is to advance health for everyone through outstanding education, research, clinical care, and social responsibility, the experiences section. So I'm not going to read this to you. I'm just going to click through them just so you can see how many hours the students that we've admitted have spent doing the things that are important for our mission. So leadership, teaching, research, because outstanding research is part of our mission. Medical exposure in terms of shadowing, as well as medical volunteering and even medical employment, the upward of 1 million hours of work that our students have done, right? Non-medical employment. Our currently accepted students have been really, really busy and lots of community service. Okay, so this is how we embrace our mission in the students that we admit to our institute. I want to spend a couple minutes with you talking about holistic review and admissions. I am fairly confident that the vast majority of you are familiar with holistic review and admissions. And what does that mean for our office is really balancing out experiences, attributes, and metrics. And I hope that you saw that with the information about our metrics with the information about the attributes of our students, namely the languages, parts of the world that they're from, ethnicities that they bring to the table, and then the experiences slide that I just shared with you with the hundreds and thousands of hours that our students have spent doing things. So this is how you put together an application that is rich, right? Rich and diverse, and really shows your journey through the process of application to medical school. It's on this slide that I'm supposed to hand it over to my colleague, Kia.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Dr. Amiri, for that. So everyone, let's go ahead and dive into our personal statement and portion of the event. Okay, so the personal statement or the personal comments portion of your application is arguably the most important part of your application, and it's only 5,300 characters. So first thing to understand is that your personal statement is inherently subjective. So it's going to be what people take and glean from the information that you give them in your personal statement. This allows the admissions committee to see your unique attributes and how you can add to the institution. This will bring your application to life. And while we understand that the rest of your application can be standardized with your metrics, your GPA, the coursework that you take, as Dr. Amiri mentioned before, your personal statement is a way to allow for individuality within your application. One thing I want to note is that if you are applying as an MD PhD candidate, you will have 2 additional essays in conjunction with the traditional personal comments section. So you'll have your MD PhD essay and you'll have your significant research experience essay. So let's talk about choosing the right topic. My favorite thing that I like to say when I tell students about choosing the right topic is pick a lane, right? So your topic that you choose for your personal comments essay will provide your committee with a deeper understanding into who you are and why you are a good fit for that institution. So you want to make sure that whatever reason you have decided to apply to medical school and whatever motivates you to go to medicine, that you put that in your personal comments essay. What has shaped your motivation, whether it be your life experiences, whether it be a health scare or a familial health scare, all of these things you want to make sure that you're adding so that way you can truly identify what makes you unique and why you would be a good fit for that institution. And if you find that you're still kind of struggling with choosing a topic, our lovely friends over at AMCAS, by way of the double AMC, have listed a significant amount of suggested topics on their website. And it's really exactly what I just said, right? Why have you selected the field of medicine? What motivates you, etc. Something that you might include that some people may not think to include are challenges. What challenges or obstacles have you faced and how has that influenced your educational journey? Also, you can include significant fluctuations in your academic record, such as if you had to take a leave of absence or you may not have passed the class the first time. So let's talk about telling your story, right? Your personal comments essay is all about telling your story. A lot of times applicants will try to write what they think will appease the admissions committee. And unfortunately, that doesn't really tell us who you are. Who are you? That's what we want to know. So keep in mind when you're writing your personal comments essay that you need to make a strong first impression, because by this time, a lot of admissions committee will have read thousands of applications and you really want to identify what makes you stand out. Help them understand your life choices and why the experiences that you've participated in have gotten you to this point. And just to reference again, why are you passionate about medicine? Be descriptive and use all of those experiences to really make an impact on this portion of your application. Committees will also want to make sure that your mission align, right? Do you align with their mission? What are you saying in your personal statements essay that truly shows who you are and why you would be a good fit at their institution? So let's talk a little bit about some pro tips that we like to say are personal statement tips. Does your personal statement flow? And is it clear and concise? A lot of you may be asking right now, what does that mean, Kia? Well, if you're writing your personal statements essay and you begin it by mentioning your scribe experience or even a shadowing experience, and then all of a sudden you jump to the fact that you were hit by a car at 5 years old, why are you telling us that information? Does it connect with why you decided to become a scribe? So make sure your flow is adequate. If you're giving us a timeline, create a clear picture of that timeline so that way we can follow you along on your journey. Do your experiences support your personal statement? So if your personal statement talks about all about how you shadowed your favorite physician, and that's the majority of your personal statement, but when we go back and look at the experience portion of your application and you've only listed 10 hours of shadowing experience, the admissions committee might be a little bit confused on why this was, the main topic of your personal statement. So help us understand. Be sure that your application and that experience portion that Dr. Amiri alluded to and talked about really connects with your personal statement. Additionally, address all discrepancies. If you know that something in your application or in your personal statement is unclear, be sure to let us know that. And if you can, try to fit it in your personal statement because it would be nice if we knew that. Lastly, we always like to say, have a stranger. Oh, I apologize for that. Very touchy mouse here. Let's go back. Here we go. Have a stranger read your personal statement. One of the running jokes in our office is, grab a classmate, buy them a cup of coffee, and slowly slide over your personal statement to them so that way they can read it for you. Because we want to make sure, and you want to make sure that as people read your personal statement, they can really kind of glean what you're saying. They can understand why you want to go into medicine, and they can also understand why you're passionate about this. One thing I do want to advise though is make sure you're maintaining your voice. And what I mean by that is if you have 5 different people read your personal statement and each of them gives you certain changes to make, you may lose your voice in those changes. So make sure that you maintain your voice as people review that personal statement for you. So as we talk about reviewing, let's talk about a key thing. Revise, revise, revise. You want to make sure that you read your personal statement out loud so that way you can pick up on grammatical errors. One thing that we've noticed when reading personal statements or your personal comments essay is that if you have errors, if you have grammatical errors, it can sometimes take away from the overall effect of your personal statement and what you're trying to say. So you want to make sure you're identifying any punctuation errors, any context gaps, and you are submitting your personal statement to either your pre-med advisor, your committee letter chair, or anybody in your academic circle so that way they can proofread your personal comments for you and they can help you revise it. Another pro tip that I recently learned from Dr. Amiri is that write your personal statement in Microsoft Notepad or Max Text Edit because you cannot upload a Word document to amcas. So really make sure that if you're writing in Notepad or Max Text Edit that you're really proofreading because it may not pick up on grammatical errors. So let's talk about other narrative sections of the application. Dr. Amiri alluded to this when she talked about supplemental application. So just to reiterate, make sure that you are answering the prompt questions. We know that this sounds silly, but you will be surprised how many people just copy and paste and don't actually answer the questions that we're asking them. Give meaningful examples. If you have made a mistake, right, and you get a mistake prompt, don't just tell us, oh, I uploaded the wrong document. That was my mistake. You can find other mistakes that you may have made. Maybe you gave someone the wrong dosage as a CNA, or you charted the wrong information as a scribe. So tell us those meaningful examples. This one is very important. Give equal importance to all written communications, whether it's your secondary application or scholarly concentration applications. We have those here at UICOM, specialty programs, or even the emails you send us. You would be surprised how many people send us emails and they provide no context. They don't tell us their name. They tell us no information, and we are left to kind of figure out what they're asking us. So be sure you give that equal importance to all your written communications. And lastly, we say connect to each school. If you're applying to a school that has a strong commitment to social justice, or they have a strong commitment to research, you want to make sure that the questions and the supplementals that your answers connect to that school. So really take the time to write and to make sure that the questions you're answering relate to the school in which you are applying. So one thing that I do want to talk about is we have a reapplication webinar that is coming up next week. And I know that when people see reapplication, they may get a little discouraged or feel a little bit disappointed. So one thing that I just want to start with is that last year, 25% of all admitted medical school students were reapplicants. So that's a very large number. 25% is a very large number. It's not uncommon to have to reapply to medical school. And just keep in mind that twice as many students that apply to medical school as there are seats available. Just at UICOM alone, we had over 7,500 applications for a incoming M1 class of 300. So, that's just a little bit under 10% of students that apply to us as we have seats for. So just keep that in mind. And luckily, if you have more questions, we do have our reapplication webinar coming up next week, and we would be glad to answer any questions that you may have, concerns, or even just fear areas around reapplying. And that is all that I have. So we're going to go ahead and head into our questions portion of our webinar. So if you have a question for us, be sure to go ahead and submit it via the Q&A portion on your Zoom screen.
Thank you. So may have been answered, but Dr. Mary, I'm gonna throw it to you because it may have come up much earlier in the presentation when this person may have logged on. So the question is more about those withdrawals on their transcript. What's the real story? How do these committees view these W's on the transcripts, even if it was for a medical reason, say?
So that's a great question. And I think, medical schools understand that you're people and that you will have things that come up. And sometimes it'll be medical, other times it'll be other reasons why the course isn't progressing the way that you thought it would, right? And so one is not okay, two are okay. If there's too many of them, and how many is too many, that's a hard question to answer because it'll vary from school to school. What we don't want to see is that there's withdrawals peppered throughout the entire transcript, okay? So that would be too many. If it's one, or if there's a cluster, maybe you had to withdraw from an entire semester and your institution will keep those W's on there, that's understandable because it's a juncture in time. So not peppered out throughout the transcript is the best look for the transcript as far as the W's are concerned.
Okay, great. As long as we have you, we have a question about campuses. So in our previous webinar, and we'll send a link out with the survey about where to find our previous webinar, which was our open house, and it talked about all about the campuses. Now, we do have 3 campuses, and the question is, when during the application process do you rank the campuses?
Excellent question. So after a student's been accepted, so when you apply to us, you apply to the system, and we accept you, you're accepted to the system. As part of the acceptance, you accept our offer back, and then you will rank the campuses. You'll rank your top 2, and obviously the one that you don't rank will be your lowest ranked campus. And we will use that information in addition to what you have in the secondary to help us with assigning you to a campus.
Wonderful. And either Kiara or Dr. Marie, you can take this next one. We have a huge team and a support team out there of pre-health advisors. And a lot of information is getting thrown out there and small tips too. So this particular person wants to know, their pre-health advisor asked them or suggested rather that they apply by July 4th. Does an early submission, does that improve your chance if you apply by this July 4th? Is that the optimal date?
can take this one. So July 4th, that's a very strict date, but we do suggest that you do get your application in as early as possible. So keep in mind that earlier I mentioned that we had over 7,500 applications. So if you apply and, if you apply November the 1st or you apply October 29th, you have to keep in mind that maybe 7,000 people have applied prior to you if you're just now submitting. So we always say the earlier the better, and we don't throw out as strict of dates as July 4th, but if you want to submit on Independence Day, feel free to do so.
The only thing that I'll add to that is submit when you're ready. Right. So don't put yourself under undue pressure to submit by a certain date. Submit when you're ready.
Great advice. In talking about applications, I know we're going to have transcripts coming in. There was a whole slide on prerequisites, and don't worry, that's a whole page on our website. But how about AP classes? How are those evaluated? Is that separate? Do they have to take them at the prerequisites at the college level?
That is a institution by institution answer. So some schools will not accept AP credits towards completion of the prerequisites. Some will. We do accept AP credits towards fulfillment of our prerequisites, and we like to see additional courses in the discipline. So let's just pick biology because that's easy. So if you get a 5 on the AP exam, the university that you're going to may give you credit for AP Bio 1 and 2. And so the course that you will take will be another biology class. My recommendation will be to take some additional biology courses because schools will vary on what they're looking for. And also those additional biology courses will help you be better prepared for the MCAT as well.
Wonderful. And I do want to have a quick shout out. We are recording this session. So if you put your question in the Q&A feature and you have to pop off, don't worry, we'll record this and send it out. And hopefully we'll be able to get to your question. So another class related question. What happens if you did poorly? And Dr. Mary, I think maybe you can answer this. What happens if you did poorly and then retook the class and had a much better grade? Are both going to appear?
Yeah, so all of the grade forgiveness and the repeating the class, those are all mechanisms to help students along their path through undergraduate. When you submit information to AMCAS, everything goes back into the pot, right? So if there was a class that a student took and they earned an F on it, we took it and earned an A, both of those grades will go into that GPA that the AAMC and AMCAS calculate for us. So if you're asking this question because you want to see, should you retake a course that you earned a C in or not, this is going to be counterintuitive, but what I'm going to say is take the next course in the sequence because we're going to expect an A out of you. And if it ends up that you don't get an A, then you've proven to us that you can't do A work in that discipline, whatever that is. If you take the next course in the sequence and do well, then you show that, you had average understanding and you were able to take that understanding to the next level. At the end of the day, either A will factor into your GPA the same way, but they have different meaning for the person who's looking at your transcript and evaluating your academic preparedness based on the courses that you're providing.
Wonderful. A piece that often slows down applications, in addition to taking time and writing that personal statement, is figuring out who to get letters of recommendation from. And I know we had a whole slide on that, but what's a good deadline? What would you suggest for someone who maybe has a few people in mind? What's a deadline you would give someone? And yeah, I don't know if you can answer that more specifically.
I would say the deadline is by when you are planning to submit your application. Or if you know that you already have a relationship with them and they know that you're applying to medical school, feel free to talk to them and say, hey, I'm going to need these letters of recommendation. Would you be willing to write them? And I know a lot of the time people will ask their biochemistry professors or they'll ask their pre-med advisor to write these letters. So I would say as soon as possible, but as Dr. Amiri mentioned before, you know what timeline is best for you. So if you already know you're applying to medical school come that first open date in May, then I would say start asking your letter writers right now if they would be willing, and really try to give them, at least a month to write that letter for you. And I'm not sure if Dr. Amiri wants to add anything additional.
It's hard to figure out when faculty members are going to submit the letters for you, but just know that a completed application needs to have all your letters in place. So start early and give them a lot of time, be gracious, and give them whatever materials they're looking for. And I'll add to what Kia mentioned is that really get letters from people that know you. Too often, and I can say this because I taught chemistry for a bit of time, I'll make fun of my chemistry colleagues. What they put in the letter is, I have a really hard class and most people fail. Admit this person to med school because they got an A. That does nothing for your application. So find those individuals that you have good relationships with and ask them for the letters.
And one more on this topic, a lot of people have good relationships with their college advisors or their pre-health advisors. Are those considered faculty letters that could count?
It varies from school to school. So for us, a faculty member is a person that you've taken a course with and they've provided a grade for you. Now, we had all those options, right? So if you provide a committee letter, then you won't necessarily have to have a faculty letter. Now, sometimes it gets confusing because with smaller liberal arts colleges, the faculty members happen to be the departmental advisors as well. And so then it's going to be whatever hat they had for you and whatever hat they use for the letter. If it's strictly an advising relationship and you have other individuals with whom you've taken courses, then by all means submit that additional letter, and that'll be an extra character reference for you as far as we're concerned. That schools will vary. I just learned from one of my colleagues today that they took all of their letter requirements away. Submit letters from anyone that is a good recommender for you, right? So it varies from school to school.
Great. We have an MCAT specific question from someone in the crowd. If someone takes their MCAT, say it's the May 20th test date, and they submit their MCATs right then on the first day, will their applications still be late regardless, received late?
No, it takes a month for the MCAT score to get to us. So if you take the MCAT in May, we'll have your MCAT score in June. And so you're still submitting really early. I don't think you're late unless you're just initiating things in October or November, just as Kia mentioned, right? Because remember, AMCAS has to verify your transcript. So there's a little bit of a lag in the system in the beginning because all of the type A students are submitting their applications early on. So you submit a late application, you'll get through the verification process quicker because there aren't many people in the queue there. But May is not late, June is not late. I would even say July is not late. But taking in August or September, like you take a September MCAT, that's late because you're not complete with us until October. And remember, we don't release secondaries until we have an MCAT score from you. You take a September MCAT. If you must take a September MCAT, that September MCAT should only be a retake, right? So that's one reason why you take an early MCAT if you're ready to give yourself time to retake it if you have to. So my recommendation will be try not to attempt the MCAT for the first time in September or August if that's the first time that you're taking it.
Great. And Q, we have a question about personal statements now. You talked a lot about having something meaningful that you can showcase in your personal statement. This person in particular wants to know, is it more important to focus on something that's meaningful, or is it important to list all of these experiences you've had, either shadowing or volunteering? What do you think about those two competing ideas for a personal statement? Because it's true, right? If you have 10 hours of volunteering, maybe even 90, and it was so impactful, should you spend the whole time you're writing something like that as opposed to kind of flushing out the activities area?
So I would say, I think it's important to do both, right? If you know that something has really made an impact on you and you only had 15 hours, but you carefully craft your personal statement to say, this is why this has made an impact on me, then I say, by all means, put that in there. But also make sure that you're still listing all of these activities and these experiences in that experiences portion that Dr. Amiri mentioned, right? So we have a reference back to it. But also one thing I would say, if something else has impacted your life that may not be medicine related, and it might have been, an injury with a sport that has now impacted you and you want to go into orthopedic surgery, feel free to talk about that as well. So your experiences don't have to exactly align with your personal statement. We just mean that if you do write it in there, make sure that there is a good reference back to your experiences portion.
That's great to clarify, because the next question was, should my experiences and vice versa, should all my experiences appear in my personal statement, and should my personal statement have experiences that are in the experience section? So yes, if you're writing about it, we want to see the hours to support that. All right, so there's a little discussion here in the Q&A about early decision. Dr. Amiri, is there an advantage to applying early? When would you recommend for UICOM?
I would say there's absolutely an advantage, but I don't want you to walk away with the understanding that weaker candidates are admitted because there's fewer people that you're competing with, right? So for us, we require that you have a meeting with me. Okay, and the meeting with me is because I want you to understand pros and cons, and I want to understand why you're willing to forego application to all other schools just to apply to us. So the pro is there's fewer schools to apply to, fewer secondary application fees to pay. You hear early, and for students who apply, that we approve to apply to early decision. Though this year we had 6 students who applied, 5 of them were admitted. Okay. Now you can indicate early decision without speaking to us, and you will not be considered an early decision applicant. So do what you need to do, send in the email, and basically the conversation will be, have you done the things that would be necessary for you to be very likely to receive an interview for us? And again, the cons, I want you to be aware of the fact that you're not applying anywhere else. And if we are unable to offer you a seat, your application is not out there until October 1. So it depends on you, what works best for you.
Great. And we have a question, Dr. Mary, as long as we're on you, where do they find that supplemental application that we've referenced?
Oh, you will get a link to that from us once you have submitted your application. So it's not just out there for you to think about right now. So we will release a secondary to you once you've submitted a primary MCAS application to us that has been verified and has an MCAT with it. Because there's a fee with it, we don't send it to everyone. We send it to individuals that we feel have a viable chance of being successful in our process.
Right. And again, there is a whole website that details a lot of some of the questions coming in. We're going to try to get to all of them though, including when do I take the CASPER, when is the last MCAT accepted, etc. This one is about coursework, so we're coming back to coursework. Kia, so does UICOM accept Organic Chemistry 1 with lab and biochemistry in place of Organic Chemistry 2? We have someone in the audience who's going to be taking Organic Chemistry 2 in the fall, but they are applying this summer, right before they take it.
So yes, we will waive the Organic Chemistry 2 only if your school does not require Organic Chemistry 2 as a prerequisite for biochemistry. So we do require Organic Chemistry 1, but we will waive that Organic Chemistry 2 prerequisite as long as your school does not require you to take Organic Chemistry 2 as a prerequisite to taking biochemistry.
Great. Back to LORs, Dr. Amiri, if someone has a committee letter or a packet, do they also need to complete the AMCAS LOR section?
Yes, so you will identify the letter that we're receiving as a committee letter. And then your committee chair or whatever the process is at your institution, you will fill out that form and hand it over to them because they get a unique identifier that connects their letter to your application. It's the same with the packet as well. Whoever puts the packet together, scans it and uploads it to the MCAS website, which is literally like, attaching something to an email. They will need that identifier as well.
Wonderful. We have someone from UICOM review our courses to make sure we meet the requirements.
You can. Yes, we have a strong team here, and we'll look at the courses. That will require that you send us an official transcript. If you're comfortable doing that, then we're happy to look at them. But our prerequisites are pretty standard, and they are on our website. So I do invite you to take a look at the website and look at the courses that we require.
Wonderful. I see a question in the chat. I'm not sure if we'll be able to answer it, but let's try anyway. What is the minimum amount of clinical or volunteering hours a student should have? And Dr. Mary, you had that wonderful slide of all of those hours that were contributed from our current class. Well, how would you answer something like this?
I would say that we don't deal with the minimals. I'm not giving you a minimal number, okay? We, just like your parents spend most of their money on things that are most important for them. If you really have a passion to go into medicine, I'm not going to give you a minimal number, because I learned very early on in my career that becomes the North Star for students, and that's all they'll do. So I don't want you to limit yourself by minimums, okay? Get as much clinical experience as you can and make sure that this is absolutely what you have to do. And because we do holistic review, the minimum will vary from person to person, right? So if you're working for food and shelter, you're going to have less volunteering hours than the student that doesn't have to do that. If you're, participating in other things. So we don't go there because we want you to come to us the best prepared that you can be.
Right. We have another circling back to LORs. Can they reuse LORs from a previous cycle?
You can, but our preference is to not see those letters that we've already seen, right? Because it suggests a bit of laziness, right? So it's really easy to resubmit those letters, and AMCAS doesn't keep the letters, so you're going to have to resend them anyway, right? So you will have to go back to your faculty member and say, hey, I didn't get in last year. Can you resend the same letter that you sent for me? So at the very least, they can change the date on that and put a couple words in there that suggests, new understandings of you. My recommendation is not to use letters that you've already submitted in the past. But if you have to, you have to, and it is what it is. And it's hard, right? Especially if you've graduated. For us, again, we understand that you're people. So if you graduated a couple of years ago and you're not in touch with that faculty member anymore, I could never go back to my undergrad faculty members and ask them for a letter, even 6 months after, let alone a year after. So we understand that. Communicate with us and we will see how we can accommodate the unique situation that you have that precludes you from having a new letter submitted to us.
Yeah, I'll have you answer this one. Do we receive a lot of applications from first generation students, and are there additional resources for these applicants?
So one thing that I would say that we're always proud of at UICOM is just our URN percentage that we have here, right? And it is roughly sitting right now at 34%. And a lot of those students are first generation students. And we have a number of offices here that can support our students. So we have our COM-UHP, which is our Urban Health Programs Office. We have our HCOE, which is our Hispanic Center of Excellence Office. And then in addition to that, our admissions team is very supportive of first generation students, and we're willing to speak to them if they have additional questions and connect them with our current students that may be first generation if they want to ask about the culture of UICOM. So I would say it varies from year to year how many we receive, but we do have the supports in place to adequately support them and to continue to support them even after matriculation. And if Dr. Miri wants to add anything, I might. I don't know if she does. She's amazing with this, so I always like to throw it to her just in case.
Thanks, Kia. Not much to add to what Kia said. So these questions that are, do you have a lot or do you have a little? So I don't know what that means for the individual who's asked us that question, but do we welcome applications from first generation students? Absolutely. Do we provide support mechanisms? We do. This is one of our modes of outreach, right? Because we understand that our first generation and college students may not have all of the resources at their disposal. So I would say, be fearless, reach out to our office, and we will connect you if we're not able to provide the support that you need. We have a large network of pre-med advisors that we work with, and we're also well connected to the National Association of the Advisors of the Health Professions. So if there's something that you need, we will bend over backwards to get it for you.
Circling back to some statistics here, back to the MCAT. For reapplicants, we have a lot out there that are either going to start taking it now or in July, just in case they need to retake it. What about later MCATs? Is taking a December, a January MCAT going to be helpful for this cycle?
So there's no December MCATs to be taken. The last MCAT of the year is September 11th. Kia and I checked that today. The January MCAT is not admissible for us. So some schools will accept a January MCAT. We will not take the January MCAT. And the reason that we don't take it is just too late in our process, right? So you take a January MCAT, we get your score in February. In February, our interview spots are filled. And so we will not be able to give your application true consideration. So in the effort and the spirit of being transparent with you, we put that hard stop on it so that you're not holding out for something that we will not be able to deliver because that MCAT score is going to be too late for us.
Continuing the discussion of MCAT scores, if you have someone who took it once, twice, maybe even 3 times, as the admissions committee, how are you looking at these scores? Is it good if you take it more than once, I guess?
So you can, right? So like anything else, the more that you take the MCAT, the average of the scores is more reflective of your true performance. Okay, so if you take the MCAT once and you go in cold because you thought this was the ACT and you could take it as many times as you wanted to, and you end up with a really low score, then you take it and you actually get the score that reflects you. We are not going to average those out, right? And generally, we don't average them out. We don't cherry pick from the different scores. We look at each individual performance as reflective of your performance at that point in time. So what I would say is don't take it too many times. One, it's a lot of money. Two, it's a labor of love, right? You're sitting there for hours taking this test over and over again. And then 3, we're not the only school that's looking at your application, right? There's other schools that have other types of perceptions on this, may not consider students who've taken the MCAT more than 3 times unless there was something necessary. So this is a test that you should only take when you know you're ready. And you know you're ready when you feel physically ill by even thinking about studying for it anymore, right? It's like, I've done this so much that I'm actually going to get nauseous because I can't do any more questions. And any question that I look at, I've seen something like that before, right? That's when you're ready. You've seen the universe of questions that the MCAT folks can throw at you and you're ready to go in. So that's when you should take it.
We have a question more about applicants who might need financial assistance either during the application, which I know that we addressed, but what about for accepted students? Do we provide financial assistance for them? Dr. Mir, I'll have you answer that. Or
I thought Kia was going to take that, and that's fine. So financial assistance, if you mean scholarships, the answer is yes. We're a large public school in the state of Illinois, so we do what we can. All students that are admitted to our program are considered meritorious as far as we're concerned, and all students that are accepted to the program are considered for the scholarships that we have. Now, I say that knowing that Dean Thompson was just able to secure additional funding for us, that there's a lot of work afoot to increase the amount of scholarships that is available. And what we could not offer in scholarship, we did something that's unheard of in medical school, apart from having free tuition, which some of our schools are able to do. Our dean approved reduction in the tuition. So what we were not able to provide in terms of financial support, we reduced the amount of tuition that our students are looking at. But we're working on it. Believe me, we're working on it.
About the AMCAS, Kia, I'll have you answer this question. We have others in the audience. They might be hospice caregivers, EMTs. Should they be listing these activities under medical, clinical, volunteering, work? What do you think?
So I would definitely say if you're working in hospice or EMT or CNA, absolutely list that in your medical experience because you are doing medical work. We love to see those type of experiences because we feel that it brings diversity to your and to our class and to your experience section. You know, a lot of times we'll see people that have shadowing or scribing. So when we see EMT and when we see, you know, just a difference in the type of experience they've done, it's always exciting to us because you may have done something a little bit different and your life experience that we talked about earlier is just a little bit different than an additional another applicant that may have applied to us.
If I could just add one piece, if you are being paid, please indicate it as paid medical experience. It doesn't devalue it, nor does it make it not clinical. It's still clinical, it's just paid, and that's okay, right? So I just don't want you to think that that would hurt your application if you were being paid for work that you were doing.
We have another couple of questions about that personal statement. So Kia, I know you mentioned it's best to maybe write this in a plain text format, since when you bring it over, you're going to lose italics, you're going to lose bold, the lines are going to get a little bit messed up when you just copy and paste. But this question is more about that first impression. And I know this might be difficult to answer, but this person wants to know, you know, your personal statement is your first impression for the university that you're applying to or the medical school that you're applying to. What do you think is the best way to begin this personal statement then?
So I always think the best way to begin it is to just sit and identify what you've done, right? What have you done that you want to showcase to the admissions committee? Let us know who you are. So as you sit and you say, you know what? I was a scribe and I've been doing that for 2 years now, and it's really impacted how I see medicine and why I want to become a doctor. Then that's where you start. And I would say the way that you begin the essay overall, right, whether it's like an attention grabbing statement, one thing we just had a discussion about is you don't want to make it seem like you're reading a script, right? From a play or something like that. You want it to be engaging, you want it to be attention grabbing, but still make sure that you're writing professionally, right? And that your grammar is proper, your sentence structure is proper. So keep all of these things in mind. But I would say the best way to begin is just to figure out what you've done and tell us about it.
Right? I'm just going to scroll. We've answered a couple of the MCAT ones that I see here. Can we get letters of recommendations from the people we have shadowed? And Dr. Muriel, I'll have you answer that.
Of course, you can get letters of recommendation from whomever you wish, right? Our requirement is 3 faculty letters. AMCAS lets you upload 10 items. So in theory, you could upload 10 committee letters and, you know, have 100 letters, right? So you can upload 10 things. We require 3 faculty letters. We will read all the letters that you provide. I will say, you know, don't overkill with the excessive number of letters. Only request letters from individuals that you feel can give us insight into you beyond what we have already gleaned from your application. I will let you know that generally letters from physicians are not very helpful, because unless you've spent a year and a half with them and you've had a different type of shadowing experience, if it's been the standard, you know, 10 days, 2 weeks, a month of shadowing, what they tell us is that you were well groomed, you were well dressed, you were polite, you showed interest, and you engaged well with the staff. We would not expect anything less of you, right? We would expect you to be all of those things when you're showing up for medical shadowing. So I'm giving that as a real example and also why it's not helpful. Does it hurt your application? It does not. But if you're applying to a school that says, you know, send me 3 letters, whoever you want to send it from, then one of those letters is that letter hasn't done anything for you. So now it's really like you've only sent in 2 letters. You've met their requirement, but in terms of the strength of things that you've added, you know, onto that scale, that's going to make you the person that they're going to invite, it hasn't done that for you. But if you can add it as a, you know, additional thing above and beyond whatever they need, then by all means, send it in.
We have another Casper question. So again, the dates of Casper are on our website, but we're already getting questions about the snapshot and duet. What is UICOM's position on these additional pieces?
So interesting, we don't have a choice with Snapshot. Whoever is taking Casper has to do Snapshot as well, because there were, I guess, a higher number of schools that were requiring the Snapshot. Now that we know that the AAMC Vita has been discontinued, I think, the Snapshot is something that a lot of schools will be looking at, particularly if they don't have the resources that, a large school like us has to have MMI Zoom or something like that. The Duet, we are participating in Duet. How we're going to use it, this is a pilot year for us. So, it's a pilot year for UME in general, undergraduate medical education. So we don't know. We're going to look and see what the data show us, but it is supposed to give us a academic, pedagogical kind of fit between the student and the institution. So we'll see.
And Dr. Muir, we have a question about any felonies, misdemeanors, traffic violations. What exactly are you required to share when you're applying?
So the AMCAS application asks you for convictions for felonies and misdemeanors. So if you were convicted, you have to submit that information there, right? Because you don't want to be in the position where we know that you're convicted and you didn't tell us, because now it's a character issue, right? That you chose to not follow the instructions. If you were not convicted, then you don't have to report it on AMCAS, because they're asking you to report convictions, right? So that's AMCAS. We are in the state of Illinois. We're a public medical school. We have a state mandate that anyone who goes to a public medical school has to have a fingerprinted background check. That goes way beyond those things that I just mentioned. This pulls up any court appearances, any time in holding, some traffic violations. There's no place on the application for you to share that. When you apply to us and you're accepted to us, we'll ask you to communicate that in writing to me. But as far as the AMCAS is concerned, misdemeanors, felonies, where there was a conviction, institutional actions, where you were put on academic probation, you had to do other things, anything that required you to follow new requirements by the institution, whether it's the Office of Student Affairs or whatever office it's coming from. Dishonorable military discharge, those are all things that will appear on the AMCAS, and they appear on the criminal background check that they do, except for the academic pieces. Obviously, your academic probation doesn't show up on a criminal background check, but you should report that because it'll be seen, right? Some transcripts will have that as the parallel transcript that they submit to us. So it'll indicate that the student was placed on academic probation. So again, you don't want to risk it. It's not a big deal, right? And if we see a GPA, which we have, which is a 0.5 or a 0.2, we know that you were on probation. So it's best for you to just come clean and let us know what the circumstances were. Your people, stuff's going to happen. Don't worry about it.
Have a question here. I think Katie might be able to handle it. So we have someone who maybe is applying right now, but they're going to be starting a graduate program or maybe a fellowship in the fall. So it's a transcript that's not necessarily going to be submitted with their AMCAS. If they're taking a gap year, especially, how do they share that with us?
So we do have just an update section in the application once you apply. It's called documents. So once you have officially applied, and if you need to update us on anything like that, as far as like letters or additional information, you can do that. However, if it is a letter of recommendation you want to submit later on, the letter writer will need to go back and submit it through the AMCAS system, how we originally submitted them. So if you're just letting us know about additional experiences, you can put that in that other document section in the application. But if it's a specific letter, it needs to be sent through AMCAS, just like it would have been if you submitted it earlier. And Dr. Amiri, if you want to add anything, just in case I missed something, please do.
Yeah, you were perfect. You covered our institution completely, but because we want this to be, general as well, please know that not all medical schools will allow updates if you have not been interviewed. So you need to understand what the circumstances are for the different programs to which you're applying. And if it's important for you, for the school to know that you are, let's say, completing a PhD or a master's degree, but they don't accept transcripts or don't accept updates unless you've been interviewed, there's literally no way for you to provide that update. So I don't want you to be disappointed. And I also want you to think about this, because you can put in the AMCAS transcript section current courses and future courses. And that way you're covered. So you don't have to send in that transcript, because they know there's future coursework. And then if they're interested, they will email you and ask you to submit a transcript. But if they're not open to updates, then you can't submit it. But at least that, you're covered because they know that's there. Then the bad part of it is that they might ask you for one, so you'll have to submit something to them, right?
All right, we're nearing the end here. Let's just close out with one question. And that's one of the hardest pieces, that personal statement. Dr. Mary, can someone just send you their personal statement for you to look over before they apply?
No, you can't. As much as I would love for you to do that, it's a complete conflict of interest for us, because how bad does it look for one of us to read your personal statement, make edits to it, and then ask you to send it back to us so that we can evaluate it positively. So unfortunately, it's a conflict of interest, as much as we'd love to do that.
Let's close out with one more. This is probably the 4th or 5th time I've seen this, and it's about high school, actually. So despite having completed 4 years of college, do we have to send high school transcripts? And what about some of those activities that you began in high school, even if they ended as you started college? Can you mention those, or are those kind of a deterrent for community?
So no to high school transcripts. We do not want your high school transcripts. And even if you have AP credit, they will come forward on the transcript from the college that accepted them, and they'll tell us how they approved it. So you don't need to worry about that. The activities, Bridget clarified, if you ended the activity once you entered college, there's no reason for you to include that unless there's something significant about that experience that is the reason that you're going to medicine. And if that is the case, we would expect for you to continue that, right? Unless it's not something that you can continue. So leave your high school greatness, for that application to college, when what we're interested in right now is all the greatness that you brought to college. However, if you continued that activity in college, absolutely include it, because what we're looking for is consistency in the things that you've done, right? And it's okay for you to jump around a little bit if you're trying to figure out what research you're interested in doing, or you're doing volunteer work. In this particular group of patients are not the patients that resonate well with you, and your preference is to work with, a more mature patient population or a younger patient population, or in an oncology unit. That's okay for you to play around a little bit with it. So if it makes sense to include it, include it. If you're going to talk about it in your personal statement, there's no reason for you to include it in your activities section. And I would even say don't include too much of your activities section in your personal statement, because as Kim mentioned, you've only got 5,300 characters. So there's not a lot of space there. So no, unless you must, and you feel that there would be a deficiency in our understanding of you as an individual in the absence of the information from your high school.
Wonderful. Well, I want to be conscious of time. I know there's several, if I can read it correctly, probably 60 unanswered questions that we were unable to get to. I'm going to have Lori, if she hasn't done so already, in the background, just drop our email in. Kia, Dr. Mary, myself, we're monitoring this chat. So if you had a question about clinical experience or what you're supposed to be putting in that COVID section, or anything, just email us, and we always try to respond promptly to any questions you have. If you have red flags and you just want to talk to us about them, send us an email. We're checking it. And don't worry, I'm going to send out a recording of this. We're going to upload it to our YouTube channel and then send it out to everyone with a survey, just in case you want to rewatch any of those pieces. And of course, always visit our website, which has step-by-step what you need to apply. And I saw there are questions about that too. When do we submit our resumes and things like that? So many great questions we couldn't get to, but thank you all for joining us, and we'll be in touch via email. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for being
here. Good night, everyone. Thank you.